All right, it is 2 minutes past the hour, so let's go ahead and get started. Thanks everyone for joining us for today's webinar brought to you by Codefresh Live. Today we are presenting the future of DevOps, GitOps 2.0. Get excited. In this webinar, we're going to show you how to get visibility and traceability throughout your, just one second, I'm sorry, I have some feedback here. I hope you all don't hear that. Okay, let me start over. So we're in this webinar, we're going to show you how to get visibility and traceability through your whole software lifecycle with Codefresh's new GitOps dashboard. We're also going to have a live demo for you. Plus, you'll hear from one of our customers, Victor Cuascut from Veeva, on how he designed an entire DevOps workflow from the bottom up, utilizing GitOps and the new GitOps features from Codefresh. But first, a couple housekeeping notes. We encourage your questions throughout the session, but just please remember to submit them using the Q&A button on your Zoom toolbar. That just helps us keep better track of them. We don't want to lose your question in the chat and not answer it. So please enter your questions there. But feel free and use the chat. I love, yeah, everyone's already using the chat already. Let's use that to share links and chat with each other. This session is being recorded, and a link will be sent to you by tomorrow at the latest. So don't worry if you have to miss a little section of it. And then you can also send it on to your coworkers after you watch this awesome presentation and you want to share it with everyone. So lastly, please remember to reference codefresh.io/events for all of our upcoming webinars. We have fresh and informative webinars for you several times a month. So with that, I will hand it over to Dan Garfield, who's going to kick off the presentation. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Taryn. You're the best. So we're going to be talking about the future of DevOps, GitOps 2.0, which is something that we've been working on for a while. You should be able to see my screen, though it says your screen sharing is paused. Resume share.
I can see your screen, Dan.
All right. Well, we'll just charge ahead. So my name is Dan Garfield. I am the Chief Technology Evangelist for Codefresh, and you can follow me on Twitter at @todaywasawesome. That's the only reason I agreed to take the job is for Twitter followers. I'm a member of the Forbes Technology Council and a Google developer expert focusing on cloud and Kubernetes. So excited to be joining with me today. We have one of our senior evangelists, Victor Farsick. Victor, you want to introduce yourself? You're on mute. You got nothing to say.
Yes, I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Victor. That's all you need to know. Kidding. Working with community a lot. Had some books, podcasts, YouTube channels, stuff like that. I'll drop my info in the comments later.
Yeah, many of you probably have read his book, The DevOps Paradox, the DevOps Toolkit. And also, Victor, another Victor is joining us from Veeva. Victor Cuascut, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hey, yeah. So Director of DevOps for Veeva. Glad to be here.
The GitOps 2.0 announcement is so important that we needed all of the Victors on board. So glad to have you, Victor and Victor. So the agenda, we're going to get into the introduction of GitOps 2.0. We're going to talk about Victor C is going to go into his journey. He's actually been an early adopter of what we've been building, and he's going to go through his experience. And then Victor F is going to go through a demo of the platform and show us how it all works. And then we'll have time for questions. And again, feel free to throw those questions in as we go. So if you're not familiar with Codefresh, we are a DevOps automation platform that covers the experience of how you build and deploy and manage your software. So if you can think about, we're going to integrate with all of your source code providers, whether that's GitHub or Bitbucket or GitLab, even VSTS and some others. And we're also going to integrate with all your deployment environments, whether that's a cloud environment, an on-prem environment. But we do focus on the cloud native tool set. So that is Kubernetes, serverless, those kinds of things. We have customers that are deploying VMs and building Android apps, but we do focus really sharply on the cloud native tool set. And that's where you're going to find, I think, the biggest value. And really this loop that you see, this is what Codefresh handles. And this is the most critical business loop that you have. Any organization, no matter who you are, the most important thing you can do in 2021 and beyond is ship more code faster than your competitors can do. And that's where we focus. Now, we announced a week and a half ago the launch of a GitOps working group. For those of you that don't know GitOps or know what it is, we're going to do a quick refresher. But GitOps has been around for a few years. It was a term coined by Alex from Weaveworks, and it's been floating around for a couple of years and getting adoption and building momentum. And the formation of the GitOps working group is something that we led with Weaveworks, Azure, GitHub, and AWS to start this working group under the auspices of the CNCF. And the purpose is to establish standards and best practices around what GitOps is and how it should be done properly and what it entails, so that people aren't, groping around in the dark. And we want to evangelize best practices and standards that are going to help the industry grow more aggressively. We launched with 5 core principles with this group: a declarative configuration, version controlled immutable storage. That could be Git. It doesn't have to be Git. It could be another version control system, even though it is called GitOps. It doesn't necessarily have to have Git if it's using some other standard, if you're using, Perforce or something. Automated delivery. So that means the deployment process should be automated. You might have manual steps to trigger it, but that delivery should be as automated as possible. And you need a software agent that is essentially reconciling what your configuration is with your deployment environment. And it should be a closed loop system that's taking care of itself. So these are the principles that are guiding the GitOps working group. And this is something, again, that we launched about 2 weeks ago. And since we've launched, we've had interest expressed from Red Hat, from IBM, from just about everybody in the industry. I think the GitOps working group started off with five or six members, and I think very quickly it's going to be dozens or even over 100 members with how quickly there is interest growing from the industry. So that's very exciting, and we're very excited that we were able to announce that at KubeCon a week and a half ago. Now, if you're not familiar with GitOps, the concept is simple. You have a project repo where you have the definition of your application, and you have your application runtime, and your application runtime should reflect what is recorded in Git. And so to make that happen, you need an agent. In this case, we're going to be using an operator, Argo, which is a CNCF project as well, open source project. And this operator is going to be in charge of reconciling our runtime with our project repo. And to make it work properly, we're actually going to use one repository for our application code and one for our runtime code, or our manifests. And basically our CI/CD process, our automated pipelines, are going to reconcile our app repo with our runtime repo. And our operator is going to reconcile the runtime with the application. And this is the common pattern of Git that has developed over the last few years. Now, as you scale this up, you'll notice that there are some challenges with this model. And this is, again, the model that's developed over the last few years. Is the most common pattern that we see. And the challenges of this are typically around identifying what's happening. If you think about the development process, the whole point is to deliver software faster, repeatably, more reliably. And in order to do that, you also need to have confidence that you understand what's going on, because at the end of the day, can you deploy at any given moment? Victor F. likes to say that if you can't make a commit and walk away and go on vacation, you're not actually doing continuous delivery or continuous deployment. And I think that's true. So what happens when something breaks? You just get on Slack and you start yelling, something is broken, who just deployed? Where did this regression come from? And so this is what I would call the day 2 problem of GitOps, right? This is the problem that comes with when you're doing GitOps and you start to do it at scale. How do you manage hundreds of environments? How do you manage thousands of microservices? And what we've established is this idea of GitOps 2.0, which we're going to get into. Because in order to identify regressions, and this is what keeps you from actually deploying faster or more often, you need to know where the regression started, you need to know what changes took place, you want to know what was changed, who was working on it, what issues were being addressed. And if you can answer all those questions, then you can actually identify regressions very, very quickly and deploy mitigations right away. So you don't have a high mean time to recovery. So the idea of GitOps 2.0 is something that Codefresh has launched about the same time that we also launched the GitOps working group. And we intend for this to be something upstream that we can bring standards into something with the GitOps working group. And we envision that the first component of GitOps 2.0 would be around observability. Because as you scale GitOps, that's where you find the bottleneck. It's, okay, now I've got thousands of microservices syncing and deploying automatically, but I don't have a good handle that I understand what's actually going on, and I don't feel confident that I can fix it if something breaks. So we need the observability piece. So we launched our first components of GitOps 2.0 in the last 2 weeks. And this is using the core principles of GitOps and adding on top of it the observability that you would be looking for, and supporting things like rollbacks and things like that. So this is the core kind of dashboard within Codefresh that's going to reveal to us all the information we need to identify what's going on. You see there's a timeline at the top. This helps us identify if I have a regression, I can just highlight the area where the regression started, and I can see every rollout that's taken place during that time. And then on each rollout, I can see what pull requests were involved, what issues were involved. So you can see the pull request here, so I can actually jump straight into the code that was being dealt with to be deployed. I can jump straight over to the Jira issues that were being addressed, so I can actually find out what was actually being worked on. I can also see who was working on it from this same view, and I can see all the services that were updated. So as I'm trying to identify and understand what's going on, I can actually get this larger roll-up view that's not just an application level, it's actually larger than that. It's actually across my applications, across my environments. And of course, the deployment timeline that I can use to identify the areas of interest. So we're gonna get deeper into this, but before we do, to remind you of the pattern, you have a user that's gonna make a change. This is gonna make a modification to application code. This is going to trigger a CI process within Codefresh, which will then create manifests on another repo, which triggers our CD pipeline. And of course, we can do testing and things like this. This is the basic pattern that you're going to see using Argo CD as the agent that's doing the reconciliation on top of the platform. So with that, I want to hand it over to Victor to share his story, and then we're going to get into a demo following that. So Victor, from Veeva, you go ahead and take it away.
All right, thanks, Dan. Yeah, so this is great. So just to start off, a lot of stuff that Dan was talking about was extremely instrumental with understanding where we were within the GitOps process. So just to give you a little bit of background, where we were, where we started within Veeva. I came into Veeva to build out work on building a new product. That came with a brand new R&D team. It started with a brand new infrastructure, something that we had to start from scratch. So I came in and I wanted a few things to be thought through first. What was the most critical thing that we had to get in order to start building this infrastructure? We're hiring a lot of developers, we're hiring a lot of engineers, and I wanted to get them up and running quickly. So what do we need to do there? All right. So the first thing I wanted to do is make sure that the process that we were going to do, it was simplistic. So simplicity, being a team of one to start off with, I wanted to build out the infrastructure and make sure that we were able to do this as simplistic as possible. I didn't want to build out a big, massive CI/CD pipeline with many integrations, with custom jobs that was going to go nowhere. And I needed to do this fast. We were building a product We were designing something that was pretty big in scale. And just to give you a little more background, one of the things that we're building is a big data platform. So we're going to be managing hundreds of billions of records, processing, scaling to the need of the business in a big data architecture within AWS. So understanding how to do that reliably and very quickly was something that I struggled with at the very beginning. What should we do to get there? And then I needed to be reproducible. So as we brought on multiple developers and multiple development teams in order to build this product, we had to define specific environments. Developers wanted R&D environments. They needed staging environments. QA wanted environments for data testing and performance testing and scalability testing. So how can I leverage this quickly while building up all these environments and understanding, even more importantly, what was where, how were things built, and configurations of those platforms were actually being done. I didn't want a whole bunch of operational burden to be put on building each one of these environments. And then at the end of it, I needed to be audible. I need to understand what's where, who's touching what, and how things are being done. So that was given with GitOps. So the whole GitOps pattern that Dan was speaking of fit that need very, very nicely. It let us commit everything into Git and define specific structures that we could reproduce very, very quickly. So can you go to the next slide? So so with that was all produced within the GitOps infrastructure. So one of the things that I really liked within the GitOps pattern was the single source of truth. So as Dan was saying, we had our application repos. Our application repos were being built or being tested. And then I had a specific repo that defined everything that was going to be deployed in all environments. So not only inside our development environment, but also our staging environments and multiple R&D environments, and also in production. And we were able to define very clearly what versions were where, how were things defined, and how were things templated within that solution. So the pattern that we went through was with GitOps. Now, what tool do we use? GitOps is great, but how do we actually implement it? And one of the things that we used was Argo CD. So after a bit of investigation, I looked through what are the top providers, what the top operators that could help me instrument this new GitOps pattern. And there's a few out there. There's Flux, there's a whole WeWorks pattern, but Argo was the one that we decided to go with. And Argo was great. It has a great GUI, as you can see here, and it showed very clearly once I instrumented something within the GitOps repo, it immediately showed up inside my Kubernetes environment and showed exactly where there was problems, where there was connections, and what we could do to fix it. So that iteration loop basically took what would have taken me weeks to kind of figure out by hand within a Kubernetes environment and help me do a reproducible pattern in the matter of days. And that was great. So the way that we kind of took that is taking up that pattern and breaking it out to something that is called App of Apps. And the way that we did that was define all of our applications in specific repo types. So as you can see here, we actually broke down our repo very specifically. And don't get me wrong, this is not where we started. And we did a lot of iteration to get to this point. but we found out that this was a very good pattern to very clearly define and see where we were. So with Argo, and with the GitOps pattern in general, we're able to define templates, manifests, Kubernetes manifests that were templated, designed for every application. So with that, we leverage a application called Customize. So with Customize, you're able to specifically define the Kubernetes manifest, and then actually add things like patches to that manifest. So we could actually have a definition of a application. So think about this in the form of Helm. If you ever leverage Helm, you can have Helm, and then you can have specific values and patch those values. But you don't need to build this whole templated logic. So within there, you can kind of see this right here, where we have a base YAML. So picture this as the Kubernetes manifest that you currently have. And then you want to define a patch, right? I want for a specific environment, I want to define, in this case, a specific label, a specific image type, or maybe a different type of command on how to launch it. So with Customize, we were able to actually implement very specific criteria and define it for different environments. So different environments, different namespaces, different environment groups for our developers and for QA. And at the output, we actually got exactly what we wanted to do. This is exactly what we want to deliver, reproducible at any point of time, and be able to deploy it to Kubernetes with confidence. Right? And that was just magic. Once this clicked, everything else just fell into place. I didn't have to go through the complexity of Helm. I understood exactly Kubernetes, right? As soon as you go through all the YAML files, you understand exactly what's happening, and then you're able to override very specific things that you want. So it's very custom to exactly what you need inside your environments for any specific group of environments that you want to set up. So with that, so great. So you could actually grab all these environments and do a bunch of things within Customize. But those are static environments. Now, what do you do with all the Helm charts that you probably already built or that are used already in the public? Right? Kubernetes has been building Helm charts for a while now. And a lot of things that you would find on the internet is built with Helm charts. So one of the things that was great is Helm actually has a concept called template. And what template does, it actually pulls the Helm and actually defines what it should be in standard Kubernetes, in the standard Kubernetes YAMLs. So with this path, I was able to create a quick make file that said, give me this Helm chart with this specific version using these values, the same way that you would do with any other Helm chart, and output it. Output it into a file that I could use inside my Argo and continuously deploy. And then I built a patch, right? So within the Argo system, within the Kubernetes manifest, I built the patch that YAML. Now this let me define very specifically what I wanted to update within my specific environment without having to do all the YAML value files, without having multiple accounts and having to deploy them multiple different ways. And going back to what Dan said, the visibility was crucial. And then this is where Codefresh came in and was crucial to our deployment. So when we were able to deploy, I was lucky enough to start within the beta program and get in and understand how the environment would be getting deployed. But now we leverage a CI/CD pattern to deploy into this new repo and look at all the visibility of understanding what was happening within Codefresh. So not only was my developers committing their code, seeing their build actually build, but then understanding what the environment was. So if they broke something for whatever reason inside their environment, they saw it. They saw it at a degraded state. And then they were able to trace it all the way back to their exact commit, to the exact Docker, to exactly where they were having issues. So we built up this CI/CD workflow that looks pretty funky here, but it's actually relatively simplistic. We commit our feature branch. That eventually builds a Docker. That Docker then commits to a Git repo. It actually goes in, checks it out, commits to a different specific folder, and changes the ID of the Docker. The same thing when you go into PR and you run integration tests. You just go in and change a Docker image within a Git repo, and Customize does it very, very easily. And towards the end of it, I'm able to build out multiple environments very, very easily. So once we got through this full pipeline and got ourselves all the way into a productionized state where we're releasing, we're able to do this continuously and consistently for multiple environments. So if a developer wants their own environment, it's as simple as copying a folder in Git, replicating that folder and commit it. As soon as you commit it, everything just starts back up. We're able to do that with consistency. We're able to understand where we were with staging and all these QA environments and performance testing, because it is exactly what we would be deploying in every other environment. And with production, now we're able to build out production and deploy into multiple regions consistently. They're all pointing to the same repo. They all have exactly the same code. So now we have confidence, auditability. We understand where things are being changed for every specific environment. And doing it simplistically has been a game changer. And the auditability that we get with the CI/CD platform has also been a game changer. So that's basically my story on how we were able to build out from scratch in literally a matter of probably a month and a half, an environment from nothing to full-fledged within a simplistic pipeline, just leveraging Argo and Codefresh, and kind of going through that pattern.
That was awesome, Victor. And I already see that there are some questions coming in, and we'll get to those after the demo with Victor here, but other Victor. But we really appreciate that story. And it's really remarkable how you were able to take essentially limited resources, and this tooling allowed you to do something that normally would have taken a lot more DevOps people, a lot more work, a lot more manual configuration, but all of these tools work seamlessly together so you can build this developer deployment experience that's streamlined, quick, and everything is super clear. Everybody can tell what's going on. Everybody can participate. So really remarkable story, and we appreciate you sharing it with us. We're going to move over to Victor Farsick now to share a live demo of some of these tooling so you can see exactly how this blocking and tackling actually works in a real kind of scenario.
Okay, so it's my time now. It's all me. Excellent. So what I will show you, it will be a very quick demo simply because there is not enough time to go into details and stuff like that. But I will still, in a very short demo, I will try to show quite a lot of things. So what will I do in advance? I will make some changes to Git repository and see what is happening from there on. I will make changes directly to the main line, skipping making pull requests simply because there is no time. Don't do that in your job. Don't push directly to the master branch only because Victor said, because Victor did not say that. He's just doing it for a demo. What will happen is that application will be compiled. I will build container image. I will scan that image to make sure that it is safe to use it, and I will deploy it to the cluster. Now, I don't have access to my cluster. I mean, I do, but I will pretend I don't. I did not configure Codefresh to access my cluster either. It is locked in a way. Think of it as secure. So the way how that deployment will happen is that my pipeline or something else will push changes to Git repo saying, hey, your production environment should look like this from now on, no matter how it looked before. And then Argo CD will pick those changes and it will apply them to my cluster to converge the actual state into the new desired. Now, I also define my application as Argo rollouts, so it will do progressive delivery. It will analyze my data from my Prometheus server, and it will decide whether to move forward or to go back. So we have progressive delivery, continuous delivery, GitOps, CD pipelines. I'm missing the fifth. It's always cool to have 5 things so that you can have a full hand, right? So that's what I am going to do, and you're going to see. Now, before I do that, let me just double check whether everything is prepared, and then I'm going to share my screen. Yes, okay, all is ready. So sharing screen, where is the button? Here, green button, share screen, excellent. You should see my screen right now. So let's do it. Let's do a very quick demo of full life cycle of application, progressive delivery, GitOps, DevOps, everything you can imagine will be in this 10 minutes. So I'm going to change my source code. I'm going to change README. I'm going to fake that I'm changing source code. This is silly, only so that I have something to push to my Git repository. So I will be doing what you're doing every day anyway. Git add, git commit, -m. I hate writing messages, and I'm going to push that change to Git. So I push change to Git, and now a couple of things should happen. So that I'm finished as a developer. I'm finished with my work. Everything else is now automated. So if I go here to Codefresh, you can see that a new pipeline was executed already. And that pipeline is a result of me pushing something to Git, Git triggering a webhook and notifying Codefresh in this case that, hey, Victor pushed something to this repository, do something about it. And do something about it, since this is a short demo, is going to be short as well. I'm cloning the repository of the application. I'm building my binaries. It's a silly Hugo application, so it was fast. I'm building my container image and pushing it, in this case, to Docker Hub, because I'm cheap and didn't want to pay anybody else. And then I'm running, in this case, I'm running Snyk to validate whether there are any medium or high issues. I'm ignoring low because I'm not that brave. And after that comes really the GitOps stuff. So instead of what you're probably used to in your pipelines, if you're deploying through pipelines, as you should, if you're deploying automatically, you're probably used to at some moment in your pipelines execute something like kubectl apply or Helm install or Helm upgrade or customize this or that, right? You're connecting to your cluster. You potentially have an agent in your cluster, and then through that agent, you're executing imperative commands like do this, do that. I'm not going to do that today, simply because this is more secure. Second, because I want to have every single change to anything, life, universe, everything stored in Git. And so what this pipeline is doing, essentially, it is cloning the repository that defines my production. It is changing the tag of the image in that repository. It created a new branch, and right now it is pushing those changes to the repository that defines production. And finally, last step, executing right now, it is creating a pull request so that somebody else, because people in my company don't trust me, so they don't allow me to deploy directly to production. Therefore, I had to enable somebody to confirm that a new release should be deployed to production. And that confirmation is done since we are talking about Git all the time, is done in a form of pull request. So this pull request was created right now, 17 seconds ago. And you can see the changes. Changes are relatively simple. It said, hey, right now in production, somebody's running, let me make this bigger. Somebody's running this application with this specific tag. And I would like to change, to upgrade this application in production to use this tag, whatever the tag is. So now imagine I'm a manager, I'm whomever has the godlike powers to approve deployments to production. I review those changes. I might do whatever else I need to do, but ultimately I say, this is awesome and it makes me feel important to be able to promote to production. And then we would send a comment, but what matters more is that I'm going to merge this pull request, and with that action, I'm confirming that I want this release to be deployed to production, completely operated through Git. So what is happening right now is that, let me see, where do I have this? What is happening right now is, I'm going to show you what's happening actually. I'm going to output Argo rollouts output. That sounds silly. Anyways, so right now, Argo CD already detected that contents of the repository defines production changed. It applied those changes to the live cluster, to the live system, so that the desired and the actual state converge. And after it applied those changes, Argo rollouts kicked in and says, hey, shouldn't you run canary deployments? It wasn't a question. It just applied canary deployments. And right now it is doing that. So for the first 2 minutes, it is redirecting only 10% of the traffic to the new release, 10%. And after 2 minutes, it will have enough information, enough data to evaluate whether it should increase the reach of the new release to more than 10% of users, or it should roll back. And it is doing that by querying Prometheus. In this case, I configured it to monitor the error rate and the response time of my application. Normally, in a real-world setting, you would have much more complex analysis of validity of your release. But anyways, 2 minutes, and you can see the time here, 94 seconds, 95. When it reaches few seconds above 2 minutes, it will have enough data to increase the weight to more than 10% and start evaluating whether it should move forward or go back. So I need to figure out what to talk for approximately 10 more seconds, and I'm out of ideas. So you will watch me in silence while I drink my Coke. If I would know how to sing, I would sing for you while waiting. There we are. Now the analysis started. We can see that 2 validations passed successfully. I configured it I think that from now on, it will continue every 10 seconds or something like that. It will increase the weight. And let me make this smaller so that you see. Right now, 30% of requests are being sent to the new release. And then it will increase that to 50%. And it's still okay. And you can see the previous release, actually 5 validations failed. So it scaled down and it reverted to the previous release. But this release, unlike the previous one, seems to be going fine. It continues analyzing data coming from my users, and it continues reaching the thresholds that I set up, and it continued rolling forward, increasing the percentage of users who see my application until it's finished. And it's finished right now. And I can show you, I can prove you that that's the case by opening the application. Voila! my application is running in production, new release, and it is validated. It used canary deployments. It used Argo rollouts for canary deployments, Argo CD to apply the changes, defining it, and Codefresh to build, test, validate, do whatever needs to be done, and among other things, to create a pull request in the repository that defines my production cluster so that everything else can happen without anybody really accessing the cluster at any given moment. And everything is fully traceable. You can go through Git commits and see what was happening in production from the dawn of time until now. Was I quick enough? I had 15 minutes. I think I was just right.
You did great. That was excellent, Victor. I'm going to take back the sharing here, and
I will not let you know. No, everybody should look at my pretty face for the rest of the day.
Sorry, Victor, it's not going to happen. Nice try. I wanted to show you actually that we actually use this internally at Codefresh as well. And so in addition to kind of the view that Victor has shown you, I want to show you actually take a peek behind the curtain and look at Codefresh production. You can see we actually have a rollout. It looks like it's happening right now. Yeah, we have a rollout progressing. And you can see that we deploy pretty often to production. And if I go down and look at each of these releases that have happened, I'm just looking at what happened in the last 24 hours or so here, or we could extend that. What you can see is that if I look at the specific release of what's currently running, I can see exactly what was promoted, and I can jump straight into the pull request of what code was actually being deployed. So I can go straight into the commits, and I can look at the file changes and the diff and all that stuff. I can see that right from here. I can also go straight into the issue in Jira and see what issue was actually just rolled out. And in this case, it's actually something, it's an integration that we have with Argo CD that was just updated, which is cool. I can see the pipelines that were involved, and I can see the committers. In this case, we've got the CFCI bot that's actually making the changes from the CI pipeline. We do use a shared CI pipeline and a shared CD pipeline in here. And I can go back and look at previous versions and see what services have changed and how the updates rolled out. So you can see this one updated quite a few services, while these ones were relatively small in their barrier. So you can imagine a scenario where if a regression happened, I could actually go straight to the point at which the regression started and go straight to that rollout and see very quickly exactly what changed, what PR was being merged, what issues were being addressed. And I could even go back before that and issue a rollback right from here. Now, the engineering team has told me that for the purpose of demos, they would prefer that I not roll back production in real time. So I'm going to not do that. But that is an option potentially for another time. So this is really powerful. We use this internally. Victor Cuascut's using this in their company, and we have a number of other customers that are using it already with great success. And it's led to really awesome efficiencies and effectiveness in the release program. So thank you for that demo, Victor. We're now going to move into the question portion, and I'm excited to address your questions. We have quite a few from the audience, and excited to get to these. If you want to get more questions in, please feel free to throw them in. The first one from Anonymous is, what are some of the differences between Flux and Argo CD, especially ones that led you to favor Argo CD? So let's start actually with Victor C for that one, since it's about why you ended up choosing Argo CD in the first place.
No, that's actually a great question. So I have used Flux in the past, and the reason that we went over to Argo was honestly that GUI. The GUI was a game changer. We were able to see it very clearly and understand exactly what was happening within our environment within the Argo CD platform.
And Victor Farsik, I know that you and I have both done a fair amount of comparison work between those two platforms. Anything that you would add, just for people who are coming into it new, they don't know Flux or Argo CD?
So I would say that Flux until recently, and really recently, was quite different than Argo CD. Especially it was very opinionated, which is good because it guides you towards certain solution. But as soon as you had to make some changes to the predefined flow, that was quite problematic, especially if you wanted to use more than one repository for everything. Now, Argo CD was much more flexible. Now, Flux V2 was released recently, and the differences are very small, I would say. I mean, there are some differences, but they're probably not that important. And the only real difference, I think, tangible difference between the two is what Victor with a C said, and that is that Argo CD has a UI that is part of the open source project. So I'm skipping now commercial options and stuff like that, but it has a UI, and UI is really awesome. But from operational perspective, they're very similar today, since a few weeks ago.
Yeah, and I would say that on some level, I've actually found Argo CD also more accessible from the perspective of I have a process, I want to improve it, I'm not necessarily ready to do everything all at once. Argo is a little bit more flexible in allowing me to do that, whereas when I was working with Flux, I felt like it was like, I have to do everything exactly this way upfront, and if I don't, it's not going to work. And so I appreciated that flexibility, even though both of them are at least somewhat prescriptive in the direction you should go and how you should operate it. Good question. Nicola asks, so GitOps 2.0 equals GitOps plus DevOps analytics plus observability. So I would say that's part of the story. GitOps 2.0 is something that we envision as this will solve the issues of GitOps that we have experienced, of running it at scale, of getting the information that we need. And so we imagine that GitOps 2.0 is a standard that we're working towards, the first component of which is observability. But we also see a lot of opportunity in the scale factor. So being able to handle rollouts across multiple regions is something that we're working on. Being able to do that in a way that makes sense. Do I need to have 500 repositories if I have 500 environments? Is there a way I can have some sort of meta layer approaching that? Also bringing GitOps to other platforms that aren't just Kubernetes, which is what it's most traditionally associated with. We're going to be doing GitOps for serverless. We're going to be doing GitOps for other platforms. And so we want to bring those standards actually and make them more universal. So GitOps 2.0 is something that we're working towards. We've released the first components with our observability dashboard, which really ties together the entire development experience from the commit to production. And so that's really critical because the first thing that people ran into as soon as they started to do GitOps at any sense of scale was just a sense of not really knowing what's going on and not being able to get a meta layer view of across my applications, what's happening across my environments. How do I identify if something went wrong? How do I know what it was that was deployed, when and where and who, and how do I get all that information? And so that's what we wanted to address first. Serverless is something that we're actively working on and hoping to get into beta very quickly. And then we're also working on addressing scale and working on patterns that can be more prescriptive for people who are building up towards a GitOps standard. John Mason asks, Victor C., you described this effort as 6 weeks for the first app service or for onboarding more. How many? How many are you targeting? What do you see as next steps? What are challenges to make it scale? I think a lot of that time was just researching the different options, right, Victor?
That was absolutely all research. I think we were able to get Argo up in 15 minutes and get the first thing deployed. It was more around understanding what our workflow should be. So the great thing about, and I'll go into answering that question, but the great thing about the GitOps workflow, it is not overly prescriptive. You could do a lot of different things on it. Argo, again, you get that flexibility on how you want to deploy things. And I think a lot of that time was just understanding what was the best way for our group and our developers. Now, currently, we were able to deploy within that time frame. So it wasn't for the first apps. Within that time frame, about 50-ish applications. But that's multiple teams and multiple time zones. Israel, Canada, New York, getting them organized within this framework, and as many as we need. Now, the great thing about this is we built this framework, and it should scale to as many applications as we need. As long as we have that visibility and the auditability and the way to roll back, I don't see a limit to how many accounts we could do, how many different Kubernetes clusters we need, or how many applications we could actually set there.
Yeah, and I want to give a shout out in our documentation. I'm throwing it in the chat. There is a guide for GitOps deployments. You can find it in our Codefresh docs. If you're at codefresh.io on the homepage, there's a link to the GitOps page, and follow that, and then go to the documentation. And it actually goes through step by step how to set all of this up, and it's very prescriptive about the right way to do it. It's very clear about the pattern and how to set up the repos, and it's very quick. I mean, if you can skip the research, and if you just follow this guide, you'll be up and running, very, very quickly. I mean, we're talking about a few hours to really set it up and understand it and have it running smoothly. So big shout out to that guide and for Kostas Kapolonis on our team who put that together. It's really strong. So I would highly recommend that. Tara asks, in layman terms, can we say GitOps as templates of the environment setup allow us easy observability? Victor Farzik, I would say that's only part of the story. What do you think?
So it does enable observability of desired states. So any intention ever made, if it's stored in Git, it is easy to retrieve, easy to track, easy to see what was going on and when. That's one of the many reasons why we adopted large parts of the industry, let's say, adopted everything as code. There are others, of course. Now, that's only part of the story. Now, the desired states or desires of humans are one part of the story. Then we have observability of the actual state, which is your clusters, what is happening there and why and how and when. And that usually goes through different metrics collected in different places and so on and so forth. And this is, I think, the most problematic part. We need somehow to connect those two. I need to see very clear relations between, hey, these are my desires. This is what I was expressing by pushing changes to Git. This is what is happening in my cluster. I can somehow figure out those two things separately, but we're still missing tooling to connect the dots between the two, let's say between Git and between the actual state.
Yeah, and that's the whole purpose of what we've launched here with this GitOps dashboard, bringing in Jira tickets, which are sort of the human readable, description of what should be expression of what should be deployed, bringing in the pull requests, bringing in the committers, all these things so that it's in one view, so that you really do know what's going on. You can jump to any point in the past and see what was going on and who did what and when and where and all of that. We're going to move a little bit faster. We have quite a few questions here. Karen asks, if the CI pipeline and the CD pipeline are separate, how can the CD pipeline confirm or verify whether the CI pipeline followed certain steps? Like, did it run a security scan, verify image provenance, etc.? That's a great question. And oh, go ahead, Victor. Yeah, it looks like you're hot on that one.
So traditionally, we are stuck into that way of thinking that there must be one process. From logical perspective, it should be one process that defines full life cycle of your application. But where we are going, and this is now not only for CD, this applies to everything. We are increasingly moving towards event-based architecture of almost everything, right? So events are being fired all the time, and then some entities, some processes are picking up those events and doing stuff, whatever that stuff is. And I think that applies to continuous delivery pipelines just as much as to anything else. And what I mean by that is that it is normal to have, let's say, I create a pull request. That's an event that triggers something. That something can be a pipeline, can be other things. Then a merge, and then another event triggers this, and then maybe that pipeline will change something in Git, which will result in a new deployment, which will trigger yet another event, right? And it's a complex. I cannot give a simple answer. How do we ensure that all that is happening? Because it would be a long discussion. But what I think is very important is that we are moving on all the levels. And when I say we, I mean industry, into event-based architecture. So like in my demo, you saw that Argo CD deployed something. Pipeline changed something in Git repository. Argo CD picked that as an event, deployed something, and then what you didn't see in my demo, if you would see if I had more time, is that Argo CD would trigger another event and say, hey, this is just deployed and operational, or even Argo rollouts actually would be a better candidate, and that might do other stuff. But it is important to think always in terms of events, because if you have a process, let's say a pipeline that, hey, do this and then wait for 15 minutes, that's such a waste of resources, of human brain cells and everything else.
Yeah, and actually some of this, I'll show you just really quickly. Some of this is actually happening essentially automatically inside the platform. So like if I show you, here I've got, I'm looking at this release that just happened yesterday. If I jump over to this image, you'll actually see all of the provenance information right here. And so you can see that it's past security tickets. Now, these are actually annotated onto the image itself. So you can have checks in your CD pipeline if you want to look for those annotations to make sure that they've been completed. But I can see how the promotion process has happened, and I can see what code actually generated this. So I can actually jump straight into in GitHub and actually see the commit that made this happen, in addition to seeing the logs in the Docker file and all that stuff. So all of that provenance information is built into the platform. And this is the whole value of bringing together your CI, your CD, your GitOps operator, your code, all of this in a platform, is that all of that traceability is happening automatically. So good question.
If I may add one more thing, if there is anybody who needs to be validated, those are humans. I trust scripts to do the right thing, repeatable more than humans at any time of day.
Yeah, that's 100% true. Nicola asks, how do you integrate GitOps with ITSM change management? A deployment is viewed as a standard change, and a standard change is automatically created inside ITSM tools.
ITSM never, as far as I know, please correct me through comments, there is never that ITSM prescribed it must be this tool. It's a set of processes. There is no such thing that you need to use tool X because it is stamped by being ITSM. And from process perspective, you just get more traceability, not less, but applying GitOps.
Yeah, if I could add something to that as well. So I come from a very highly compliant background. So building things for like FedRAMP high stuff. And what Victor's saying, Victor with a K, is saying is absolutely true. Compliance or things like standard changes does not necessarily mean tooling. It's process. So understanding the process. Now, if you can automate that process, which is what we're trying to show here, then it simplifies how we would build and how to deploy, and all those compliance, everything that goes around those ITSM changes gets automatically done just by building out that compliance inside of the framework itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Anonymous says, thank you, Victor Farsik, for Docker Flow. It got me started in the container space. Shout out for you there. Can you please share the Canary deployment config? Is that config in Argo CD or is it in Git?
So the one that I did today, an extended version of that, will be published on our blog tomorrow or Monday, not sure. So by Monday, go to Codefresh blog and you will find it by Monday. And this is now self-promotion. we are going to do a webinar. I don't know the date yet, but I'm going to do this in a much more extended form. So send emails to Tarin. She will notify you when the webinar will be happening. We don't know the date yet.
And also a shout out for Victor and Victor are going to be doing a show on YouTube coming up, what is that, in 2 weeks, where they're going to spend about an hour just discussing this. We're going to finish answering these questions, but I do want to give that shout out. Go check that out, and we'll throw a link into the chat. Nadal asks, are these open source tools? A lot of them are. Argo CD is an open source tool. The steps for working with Argo in Codefresh are open source. There's a ton of open source components that are available from Codefresh. So many of them are, some of them are built on top of open source tools as well. Do you have any recommendations for Kubernetes UIs like Lens or Octane? Where do those tools fit into this ecosystem? I actually mostly just use the UI in Codefresh, which actually reveals a lot of this stuff. There is a Kubernetes dashboard, which will give you most of this information. So if I were to just change my share here really quick, but while I'm doing that, do you guys have any recommendations for additional Kubernetes tooling, like dashboards?
I'm a command line guy, so I do like K9S. But I do agree with you. A lot of the stuff goes directly inside the Codefresh pipeline. I'm only looking at K9S when I'm trying to do, operations, investigations, and things like that.
Yeah. The thing I like about the Codefresh one is that I can actually have all of my clusters there. And so I can just navigate between lots of clusters very quickly, which is nice. And that's just built in and part of the flow. So it's very convenient to work with. Jorge from Brazil asks, when will native Codefresh GitOps without the need for Argo CD be available? I don't think we have anything specific to announce on that at this time. It's something we're considering. The way that this is architected is really that there is basically this idea of GitOps operators, which are doing reconciliation. They're reconciliation agents. And the idea is that now we support Argo from a visibility standpoint. We do support the others from a use within the pipeline standpoint and from a flow standpoint. Now, the intent is to add more and potentially, you can actually use Codefresh, the Codefresh runner, to do essentially the same job because it can live on your pipeline, live on your cluster, and actually pull changes in. But that's not currently exposed within the GitOps view, and the intention is that we would add support for that sometime, hopefully soon. Dan asks, how would one convince people who are traditional and cautious regarding pushing to production? For example, I noticed Codefresh pushed to production 5 times last Friday, but I've worked with people who would never allow that simply because they've always believed in never deploying on Friday. And I gotta say, anyone who has a rule like no deploy Fridays, it is a symptom that says we don't believe in our deployment process. We haven't figured out how to automate it. And either we plan to or we don't care. And I totally understand the sentiment. Your deployment process probably isn't there, right? But what you need to do is show, look, we're going to implement this automation, and this is how it's going to work, and we're going to do it in this way. And let's watch. Let's see how regressions happen. And if you're deploying, the old saying is, if you're bad at something, do it more often. If you're bad at deploying, you got to do it more often. You get to the point where you're doing deployments all the time and you're not getting those regressions because your pipelines are robust, your process is working. And even if one did happen, rollbacks can catch it automatically, or you're doing a canary so it automatically catches and stops. That's going to build confidence. And then those people are saying, we don't ever deploy on Fridays. You can just point to the record and say, look, we've been deploying reliably all month for several months. You're telling me I can't deploy on a Friday, and I'm looking at the record here, and I don't see the evidence for it. I think that's very convincing. Anything that the Victors you want to add, either of you?
I completely agree. It is absolutely a symptom. I've been at multiple places where we built out brand new DevOps teams, And the first thing is fear of deployments. And I think understanding what your pipeline is, feeling confident in what your pipeline should be, and being able to prove it. Like you said, can I show no regression, or can I show regression, but it automatically rolled back? Now, those are really important things to be able to show your executives, your developers, so they could start building confidence inside their environments, and then they'll have confidence inside your workflow and deploy it at any time. I don't care if you deploy in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
You should have the automation to catch all those issues that might happen.
And I would say you can also take it on for your corner, right? So if you're managing one section, make that the reference application for the rest of the company. And you say, we're going to do this, the cloud native way. We're going to go all in and do it right and take ownership of it and say, look, if it goes down on a Friday afternoon, it's on me. I'll fix it. I'll take care of it. But let's do it on this application. Let's show and prove that it's done. And you'll see how much more productive we are. You'll see the value of what we're doing. And then you're going to be coming and you're going to want to replicate what we've done. And we've seen this pattern over and over again at companies. All of our customers, it's very common that we land, there's one small group within an organization, or maybe a media company or gaming company. So we have some of the most popular gaming companies in the world using Codefresh. And they will use it in one corner of the organization, and that corner shines. And they're deploying more often, they're more successful, they're having fewer regressions, and people start looking up and they say, how do I do that? I want to do that. And then that becomes the template that the rest of the organization follows. So we are at time. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Victor. Last word.
No, it's also a sign that usually, in most cases, when those questions arise, that usually means that there is a real separation between different departments. I develop, you deploy. I don't deploy your stuff on Friday but if you establish a clear ownership, this is my application. Hey, why do you care if I deploy on Friday? Because if it fails, it's I was about to say us. I cannot say us on a webinar, right?
I think you're allowed to say us. It's okay.
Bottom on the line, right?
It's my took us on the line.
Took us. Okay, I'll remember that one.
That's great, Victor. I agree 100%. Well, we want to thank you for joining us. Again, GitOps 2.0, go to codefresh.io, check it out. Feel free to hit us up on Twitter. I am at Today Was Awesome. Victor is at VFarsic. I don't know if Victor C, you're on Twitter, but you feel free to give a shout out.
I'll post something.
Okay. Hopefully that was fun and informative. Love to talk to you. Love to hear what you think. Reach out to us on Twitter, ask your questions. Otherwise, come back for the hour-long conversation between Victor and Victor. It might be a new ongoing series called Victor and Victor on CBS in the evenings. Love to see that. All the Victors coming out answering questions, but they're going to be having a discussion on the 16th and would love to have your feedback. Appreciate you filling out the survey and letting us know if you loved it, if you hated it. Feel free to just send me your hate mail on Twitter too, and happy to address it there. With that, we'll let the survey run out, and appreciate you all coming. Take care.